It's lovely to be back here. It's not quite as cold as it is in Toronto, but I'd rather have 11 degrees below and 6 meters of snow than 11 degrees above and 6 millimeters of rain as we get every day in London. It's a grey old place, London, at the moment. Needs livening up with Sauvignon and Pinot Noir and Carmenere and Chardonnay. And it's happening. Michael gives figures for what's happening in the Chilean wine market, and I think they're slightly more encouraging than one or two people have said this morning. In the last 2 years, the over £5 segment in Britain has gone up by 57%. I can think of few countries that would not love to have those figures. Thank you, Michael, for pushing that drive. We should remember that when people say that our price points are too low. Some of them are. Michael knows that. We all know it. And that's why all the effort in the wines of Chile in the UK goes into the above £5 market, not below £5 market. But I do a lot of tastings with members of the public. I do them in Britain, I do them in Ireland, in Scandinavia, the United States, in France, in Singapore, all over. My audience don't read wine columns. They rarely possess a wine book. They've never heard of Robert Parker. But they do like drinking wine. Not tasting wine, drinking wine. In our rarefied wine world, we can easily forget that wine is not for tasting and spitting. It's not for marking out of 100 points. It's for drinking. And the best wine is the one that's best for drinking. Now, let me share with you a few things that have happened to me recently. There are some wine clubs in Britain I return to after a long absence. Often the people are mostly the same, but their views have changed. One particular club I recently revisited was in the north of England. My first visit there was 10 years ago, and when I asked them then what their favorite wine was, Australian Red, they chorused. And now I ask them, Chilean Red. But why not Australian? Because you can't trust it anymore. The promise of consistently excellent flavors at a fair price, not a cheap one, a fair price. That promise has been broken. Too many grand old brands have been bastardized. Too many new brands are nothing but marketing hogwash. So Chile is taking Australia's place as the consistent, reliable red. The wine drinker's wine of choice. The wine that the wine drinkers trust. You in Chile must decide. Does that sound good? What do you want to be? Last week I met a guy who'd never drunk wine. He was in his 30s, successful, cosmopolitan, ran his own company, and he'd never drunk wine. I had the chance to break a wine virginity. I took it. I lined up 4 wines, 2 old-fashioned, 2 brand new, but all high-quality stuff. An oat Chardonnay, he hated, saying it tasted of splinters. A heavyweight, high-alcohol Colchagua Carmenere, he found undrinkable. Why that woody flavor? Why is it so tough and fierce? So I gave him a new Sauvignon Blanc from Western Casablanca. No oak, just snappy, green fruit flavors, fresh, tingling acidity, and his eyes lit up. That's wine? Yeah. That's modern wine, made with the modern wine drinker in mind. And then I gave him an unoaked young Carmenere from Limery, not smothered with oak, not over-ripened till all its flavors had been baked away. And he gulped it down and his eyes blazed with excitement. And the wines he loved, they weren't oaked. They weren't overripe. They weren't going to get 100 points from Robert Parker. But they were truly high class. Approachable wine without tears to start him on his wine drinking life, yet tasty and characterful enough to thrill a bunch of world-weary wine critics like us. You in Chile must decide. Does that sound good? What do you want to be? I was invited to a final blending session by one of New Zealand's leading wineries. They were going to bring out a new top-of-the-range Sauvignon Blanc. I quietly slipped in a bottle of Vignaleda Garuma Vineyard Sauvignon into the lineup. The result was electrifying. All these New Zealand Sauvignon experts, they couldn't believe what they were tasting. The wine was full of marvelous tangy green flavors, lime zest and jalapeno peppers and green apple skins, crunchy coffee beans and green peppercorns. Just the flavors that had made New Zealand famous a generation ago. They seem to have forgotten how to make them. You're just discovering how to make them. Chile can be the innovator, the personality leader. And if you hold your nerve and keep your Sauvignon sharp and fresh, you can be the producer of the most exciting Sauvignon Blanc in the world. You must decide. Does that sound good? What do you want to be? I've got a friend, rich, very rich. Used to drink Cloudy Bay, New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, the world's most famous white. To hell with the price. It's the best. I'll pay. Last year, I saw him again and I said, hey, how are you enjoying your Cloudy Bay? Oh, I've stopped drinking that, he said. I've discovered you can get Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc at 3 bottles for £10 at my local Tesco. So I drink that instead. It's not nearly so good, but I never knew Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc could be a cheap wine. So I go to my local Tesco, and I see an old mate of mine in the queue. He's also rich. He used to be one of the bosses of one of Australia's biggest companies. He always drank top-end, expensive Sauvignon Blanc. He was carrying a case of this miserable, dilute Kiwi Sauvignon Blanc, 3 bottles for £10. From the world-famous Marlborough wine region. He looked sheepish. Roger, I said, what are you doing drinking that stuff? Well, he said, it is Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. In name only. A great wine region's reputation hopelessly debased by massive overplanting, overcropping, and greed, so that it becomes a discount junkie's paradise. A reputation takes a long time to build and a very short time to lose. You must decide. Do you want to follow that track? Do you want to be the dukes of discount? Do you want to be the chumps of cheap? Does that sound good? What do you want to be? Now, not long ago, I went to a star-studded tasting in London. Eduardo Chadwick was showing off his top estate wines against the Bordeaux first growths. All tasted blind, but we knew the Bordeaux 2005s are all there, one of the greatest Bordeaux vintages of all time, and we lapped them up. And then we marked the wines. My two top wines in this glittering array of Mouton and Margaux, of Lafite and Latour. Senya and Viñedo Chadwick. Why? Because they tasted best. And they tasted of where they came from. And they tasted of the passion of the people who'd grown the grapes and coaxed the wine into being. And they tasted Chilean, not French. Not Californian or Australian, not pleading for 100 points from Robert Parker. Not over-oaked, not overripe, not over-alcoholic, just what they were. World-class wines from two very special places in Chile. You must decide. Does that sound good? Do more of you want to do that? What do you want to be? You can be all of the things I've mentioned. So could Australia have been. Perhaps New Zealand still can be. And Chile? You must decide.